Hi guys, so this video here is taken from a full course on building a track from scratch in Logic. You'll be able to watch all of the Logic related videos for the course on YouTube. There will be a link to the playlist below for you. But in this course, we're basically building this whole track from scratch. If you want to follow along with that, you can. And if you want to download the project file and all the samples that go with the course, there's a link to that in the description as well. I hope this video is useful to you and that you're able to follow along with the course. Let's jump into it.
Feeling heavy, but now I'm steady, going up from hitting the ground.
Okay, so it's time to approach the vocals, and same process. We're going to start with the buses, but obviously the vocals have got lots of other elements and things that come into play. So what we need to do is have a listen through the different sections and make sure we're not losing anything and see what kind of compression we're going to need. And potentially an overall broad EQ as well before we go into the details of each one. Now everything just goes to the one bus, so when we select it, it's going to literally show us all of these different channels. But we need to have a listen to the individual parts, and how they sit on the track is also going to be very important, especially when we're dialing in things like compression. So if we look at the earlier section here, it's a lot less dynamic than what we've got over here, for example. So if we compress this area, and then when we get to here, it's going to get absolutely slammed. So we need to listen to how everything's going to sit and maybe work on the individual channels when it comes to that kind of thing.
I can't get too far. All you left me were scars. Can you tell me what we are?
So there's nothing like glaringly standing out. Balance is good, even on the other sections we've got right at the start as well.
Can you tell me what we are?
That's all good as well. Cool. So here's a really good example of like an area that would need compression. So let's take this section here and we're going to zoom right in. It starts off like quite loud. However, this last phrase right here is almost whispered and it just starts to get lost. Okay. So we could do this as a whole on the track, but we need to be really careful that we're not touching the louder sections too much, because we're going to bring a lot more dynamic out later as well. The other way that we could do it is to bring just that phrase up. And I think that's what we're going to do here. So what we'll do to bring just this phrase up is select all of these. We're going to do T and I, and we're going to slice it just here. Just that last phrase that gets brought out slightly. And we're going to zoom in. We're going to make sure very subtly that we're just going to put a little crossfade in. And we do that by getting this icon up here and dragging the opposite way. And it gives a little crossfade. And the reason we're doing that, because we're going to make a gain change, we might get that little jump. So the crossfade is just going to blend the two together. Now, if we select all three, and we can just add gain back, instead of it being -3 like we made it, we'll make this particular phrase -2 and just gives it 1 dB back. I'm going to give it another ½ dB, so it's going to go to -1.5. And that just simply makes it more listenable right off the bat. So we fixed one small issue and we haven't even had to reach for any effects yet. Let's take this larger section here. Remember, this has got all these extra bits underneath and these might need some balancing out. And that all sits really, really well. Now, the reason I took the strings out, the strings are going to be sort of a backing element for everything to sit on, but they're quite dominating there. We need to really come to dial those back when we mix them. But with all the main elements in, the vocal sits all right there as well. It could maybe use just a little bit of compression. There is a big jump between the two. Again, we're going to go through everything else before we do that. Let's take this large section. Let's take this large section just here.
They used to be so kind, but now I feel so blind. All my thoughts in my mind. Oh no, I love you, but I can't see your view.
Cool. So there's something that definitely needs its own little space and raising up. We've got the extra little sections just here. And they are just pretty much completely lost. My way of resolving that is going to be to give them their own sections because we can, and we've got enough channels to do so. So same trick as usual, we're just going to duplicate them over. What we'll do is copy both, just copy them down one like that. Take the back section, just like so. And I think it's from here, right? Cool, so just give that the tiniest lead in. Take these two and just roll them away. And now we'll just move them side by side. Okay, so what we're going to do first off, adjust the gain. They can probably come to 0. And the other thing I really want to do is send them quite heavily over to the reverb. So we're going to send them off to bus 2 with the others. Perhaps a really harsh amount. Cool, way too much. Okay, and the trick we're going to end up doing on these will be like a really long release, but we'll probably come tackle them individually rather than looking at the bus here. And we know that this last section should be all good as well.
So tell me, I need to know, who are we? Is this something you could show? Is this something you could show? I need to know.
So balance-wise, we can hear the vocals all the way through. Something that kind of needs to happen, it's really going to be for these louder sections, which works out well because we don't have to go crazy with our compression. It's just to glue them together a bit. They feel a little bit disjointed still.
So tell me,
Like they all happen together, but you can kind of tell it's multi-layered. You want to make it feel like a big thick vocal. Same thing we did with the drums, a little bit of compression sticks them all together. So we are going to put a compressor on there. I like to use usually the vintage VCA. So we're going to do that again. Really light on the ratio, about 2.5. We'll dial the threshold in. Knee, going to bring it right back. Attack wise, I think it can be relatively slow, probably around the 40 region. So what we'll do for attack is we will just dial it in real quick like this.
so tell me, I need to know. So tell me, so tell me.
Okay, so 74 feels like a nice, it doesn't suddenly like pull out from the vocal, it lets it happen a little bit. Just do that by compressing it really, really harshly, and then you can kind of hear what's going on. So if the vocal comes in, it suddenly pulls it back really, really quickly. It doesn't necessarily work too well. So I've ended up at about 74 milliseconds for the attack on there. We'll just bash the threshold back now. Don't want any makeup gain. We want auto switched off. Actually, we can leave auto release on for the vocal, and we do want auto gain switched off. We don't want any distortion. And let's just dial this in. I just want it catching maximum sort of 3 dB.
So tell me, so tell me, so tell me. I need to know. So tell me, I need to know. Who are we? Is this something you could show?
Okay, let's just test the levels there, because as we've seen before, it can be a bit temperamental with the VCA. So before, let's see what our peak was.
So tell me,
So peaking at 10.7 previously for that first little phrase. Let's have the compressor back on.
so tell me,
Of course, nearly a dB over. So we're just going to take that extra dB of gain back down,
so tell me,
and we're right back in the ballpark we were. Perfect.
so tell me.
And I actually don't think we need the extra gain there at all. I think we can let that vocal sit back a little bit. And something I'm hearing now is maybe that we can compress the drums a little bit harder in line with everything else.
So tell me, I need to know. Who are we? Is this something you could show?
So that little bit of compression is helping the vocals stick together. They're all a little bit loud, like we can hear it really well, the whole portion of the track. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to turn my monitoring right down. And the reason we do that, so the track's just barely audible, and I'm probably going to bring the vocals down a few dB here in line with everything else.
So tell me,
So for you, it'll be the same level right now.
I
But for me, it's really quiet. And the reason being is if I bring the vocals too low, they'll disappear.
who are
However, that is a nicer balance, just minus 2 dB.
we? Is this something you could show? My thoughts in my mind. So tell me, I need to know. Who are we?
Yeah, I think that's a nicer balance personally. Now I'm going to pop an EQ on here, and I'm going to do the same trick of making sure there's no nasty low end,
So tell
which there is.
I need to know.
Now we can see she's got tones all the way down to nearly 100 hertz. So we're actually going to roll it off right up to sort of 80, but we don't want to lose any of those nice fundamentals that roll through there. And if we adjust the Q to sort of about 75-ish, somewhere to 80, it's usually nice and flat. Leave it as a more gentle roll off on the vocal.
So tell me, I need to know. Who are we? Is this something you could show? My thoughts.
Now I'm just gonna have a sweep around the re to 10K area. I think we're probably gonna dip a little bit of 4K and actually bring a little bit of 6K up. It just seems ever so harsh there, maybe like some sort of shines missing. I might again use the tube the pull tech to lift the top up after taking out some of this, but we'll have a listen. I could well be wrong.
So tell me, I need to know, who are we? Is this something you could show?
That's fine. So it's more around the 3K region. It's just the littlest dip there, just about 2 dB.
So tell me, I need to know.
It's a really nice shine right around there. Going to be what, about 6K. I think what we'll actually do is use the high shelf on here, bring it down like that. We're just going to give about 3 dB a lift in there.
So tell me, I need to know.
There's just some like really harsh type noises. We're going to take that band we just switched off here, right around 10K, so quite narrow. Just dial that section back down to where it was.
So tell me, I need to know. So
It's right around here.
need to know. Need to know. Need to know. Need to know. Need to know.
Cool. And another way we could catch those sorts of things is to use the de-esser, but I will do that on the individuals, which we're going to start diving into now. And we're going to start with the center one just here.
Tell me, so tell me.
And one of the first things I'm going to get on here is in fact a de-esser. Cool. Now this is the de-esser 2 plugin. It works a little bit like a compressor, except you're finding it over a specific range. So you've got 2 filter types here, like a high pass or an actual like band filter, and then you set the frequency of that band filter here. If we put a filter solo on, then we can just hear the issues, and we're going to try and catch some of those S's and bits that pop through.
So tell me,
I think they're actually quite high up in this.
so tell me.
That's with the filter on. So we can actually see it catch. So here,
So tell me,
it's capturing them and taking them down a bit. However, it's really, really taking a lot out.
so tell me, so tell me,
So in context,
so tell me, so tell me.
okay, so hopefully you can hear that the so sticks through a hell of a lot more. This just takes it down, just that S like sound, or just that little bit.
So tell me, so tell me,
It's still a little bit much.
so tell me, so tell me, so tell me, so.
And again, this is the loudest section of the vocal, so it shouldn't be damaging or negatively impacting any of the other areas.
I can't get too far.
It is kicking in, but barely even noticeable. Now, these side takes,
I can't get too far.
they're the same performance, same mic down at the same time. I will put the de-esser right at the start of the chain just to suppress those as well.
I can't get.
So let's listen to that phrase that had the S's in right at the start here, in context with all of them being de-essed.
So tell me,
It still seems really harsh, doesn't it? But in context of a track,
so tell me, so tell me,
it's just less impactful now.
so tell